Hello everyone, welcome to this week's live stream. As usual, if you can hear what I'm saying, if someone can just message me in the comments that everything is working. Hopefully the sound is all okay. It's been a really interesting week, hasn't it, with all of the stuff that we've seen going on with GameStop. So we'll talk about that. We'll look at the different markets. We'll look at our usual markets, FX, metals, indices, crypto, look at Bitcoin, oil, and we'll look at anything you want to look at, really. So if you want to type anything you'd like looking at in the comments, when I've gone through the usual markets, I'll go back through the comments and we'll pick up on some stuff to look at. Someone's already mentioned the VIX, so we will take a look at that, the volatility index. Before we get into it, as usual, let's just go through our risk warning. This presentation is for educational purposes. It does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones and Capital.com accept no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. Spread bets and CFDs are complex instruments and come with a high risk of losing money rapidly due to leverage. 75% of retail investor accounts lose money when spread betting and or trading CFDs with its provider. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets and CFDs work and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Our special offer of the day, I put the wrong promotion thing in here actually. We do have a zero spread today, so no bid offer spread, but it's on the DAX. It's on the German index. I put the S&P up. That's a mistake. So it's the German index is the zero spread offer with Capital.com. So if you're a client, you can take advantage of that for today, and if you're not a client, you can open an account pretty quickly, or and download the app and get up and running. So we just have a quick look. Now the US is open. So we see where GameStop's trading. They're trading at 360 at the moment. We'll talk about this. They closed yesterday at 195, and I did see they were up about 80% up in the pre-market. Absolutely crazy week. So I think this will be one of the first things we talk about today is GameStop. But I should say as well, if you're watching the stream, you're obviously on our YouTube channel. We do lots of YouTube videos. So if you want to click on subscribe, what did we do this week? Natural gas, crude oil, and GameStop, of course. But we do regular videos throughout the week that are all free, obviously. So if you could click on subscribe, it helps the numbers and the algorithms and all that stuff. Keeps everyone happy. So if you could do that, that would be great. There's GameStop. Let's bring the chart up. Where's it trading? 348. So something of a gap in GameStop. So from below 200 close last night. Looks like it opened at 400 this morning. But let's talk more about that in a second. Let's get into things. So important events for next week. First of all, very briefly, Monday, 1st of February. Eurozone retail sales. Tuesday the 2nd of February, Eurozone GDP. So how's the European economy doing? Thursday next week, we've got the Bank of England decision, interest rate decision. No changes as usual expected to interest rates. And then Friday the 5th of February, US non-farm payrolls. Unemployment numbers, always a big one. So we'll be here as usual next Friday to do our live stream. We'll do it an hour after the payrolls, so everything's got a chance to settle down. So there's quite a lot going on next week. But let's start with this week. Let's talk about stock markets. It's been a volatile week in all markets, but the big focus has been the main stock that's really got the headlines has been the US retailer GameStop. GME is the code, the ticker. And put simply, there's been an attempted short squeeze from coordinated by the internet, internet chat room, internet forum, social media. Reddit is one that I think plenty of you might be familiar with. There's a sub forum in there, Wall Street Bets, that's got, I think, a few million users. And GameStop has been on their radar for a few weeks. So what we've seen, if we go and look at the GameStop chart here, let's take this back. I've never really seen anything like this before, even in the days of the .com boom and bust. It's basically been a concerted effort. I did a longer video yesterday explaining it, but a concerted effort by people on the Reddit bulletin board to buy and keep buying GameStop stock. And one of the reasons was one of the main reasons it was so heavily shorted. Short selling is where usually institutions, although you can do it as a private investor as well, will sell shares they don't own with a view to trying to profit from the share price falling. If the market moves against them, they may need to cover their shorts at a loss. If it moves massively against them, they can be in a lot of trouble. And this is what we've seen with GameStop. If we go to where we were at this time last week, 22nd of January, GameStop stock was around $40, $45 a share. Yesterday, it touched $475. So we've seen GameStop trade up tenfold in a week. And one of the big hedge funds that was short GameStop, Melvin Capital, is down. I think it's down 30% for the month to date. And it's because of the short. I think it needed a $2.75 billion bailout from two other hedge funds because of the losses it had sustained on GameStop, because of this aggressive push by Wall Street Bets to keep buying the stock. We saw lots of brokers yesterday suspended trading in GameStop. We also had a statement saying the White House and the Treasury are monitoring what's going on. So you could say, is it market manipulation? I mean, I don't really want to get into that. I think it's maybe an academic discussion. I think if they're having that discussion out in the public domain on a public forum, plenty of people I think have tried to do this in the past, and it's never worked. It's been a really incredible week, I think, in terms of the efforts of an enormous amount of, I'm guessing, relatively small retail traders, although some of them have made millions of dollars, I think, trading the options, a leveraged instrument on GameStop, and have driven the price higher. I must say, I said in the video went out yesterday. We love the stock, yes. The video went out yesterday, and I said I think the best thing to do is maybe to be short now, because the move, may well have happened. Perhaps the clever money is short, but also, I mean, how do you go short, or how do you actually try and sensibly trade something that just yesterday went from $480 at 3 o'clock UK time to $120 within an hour and a half? So the price move, what's that, 70% move in an hour? This makes crypto trading look like a sensible approach for your pension plan, the sort of volatility that we've seen in GME. And there's a few other stocks as well, I think, that have been picked up. I think AMC is another one, isn't it? I think another pretty high profile stock that looks to be taking, what's that done? That's gapped up as well. It looks today. But again, big move in AMC, which I think is it a US cinema chain, something like that? I'm not sure. But $4.70 January the 26th, and then almost $20. Was that yesterday? Day before yesterday. So that's one, but the high profile one has been GME, all over the news. I was reading, I think Twitter this week, it's felt like every third tweet has been about GameStop. So you can see it really selling off now after that gap higher, with plenty of people saying they're not going to sell until it gets to 1,000 or 5,000 or whatever. I do wonder if the party's over for this one, to be honest. Let's see. Let's see where it ends the day. But it's been absolutely fascinating, this week. Clearly, you can trade it with us if you want to. Plenty of entertainment if you want to trade GameStop. Like I say, the sort of trading I do, the sort of stuff we do in our videos, it's a little bit on the volatile side for me, but a really interesting stock to watch. So if there are any others out there that you want looked at, we'll take a look at them. But we'll keep jumping backwards and forwards onto GameStop during today, and see where it's trading. Oh, Elon Musk as well. Yeah, that was another one from this week. It's been just a crazy week. Elon Musk. We'll take a look at Bitcoin in a bit more detail. Elon Musk changed his Twitter bio today to just say Bitcoin. So took all the stuff out of his bio. There's the effect on Bitcoin. So it was about 7 this morning, from 32,000 to 38,000. Maybe that wasn't the only reason, but I think that was definitely one of the catalysts. Anyway, so let's go back to our recap, then we'll go into markets. So stock markets, really volatile week. And of course, actually, because the impact it had, we saw really big falls in the S&P, relatively speaking, in the S&P over recent days. Here we go. And there was talk that institutions were having to cover their losses on stocks like GameStop, were having to sell some of their more liquid assets to cover losing trades. How true that is, I don't know, but we've certainly seen plenty of volatility in the broader stock market indices this week. I must admit, I thought we might have a bit of a squeeze higher today in the S&P. It's not happening so far. It looks like it's really dumped since the open, but we'll take a look at that one in a bit more detail. So it's been all about the stock market this week. But gold, it's the gold and silver. So sideways in gold, pretty boring week in gold. A 3-week high in silver, which also ties back in to Reddit and Wall Street Bets, because apparently, some of the chat is that their next target, and maybe it's even happening and maybe it isn't, is the silver ETF, SLV. I tend to trade the silver, like silver futures. There's a silver ETF that is very popular, I think, in the US for people who want exposure to silver. So there was talk that silver was the next target. And actually, if we look at silver, here's the price of silver. If we have a look at this on a short-term chart, we have seen, if we go back to yesterday, silver's gone from about $25, $25.20 to $27.50 at the moment. And it does feel that if gold hasn't moved as much, we haven't seen that much weakness in the US dollar. So I do wonder if the ETF getting bought up is having an impact there. But we'll have a look at this again in a bit more detail, because silver, I think, is always an interesting market. Bitcoin, strong start to Friday. We touched on that. The Elon Musk quote change of his Twitter bio this morning. But is the topic. I still don't think we're going to see all-time highs for Bitcoin. Famous last words again anytime soon. I think, again, we saw a massive run. We'll take a look at it in a bit more detail, but I do wonder if 42,000, whatever it was, is the top so far. We'll take a look at that. Crude oil, fairly quiet week for crude, but continues to hold above $50 a barrel, and defying a cautious 2021 economic outlook. FX, the pound again has very briefly touched a 33-month high and got knocked back again. This is what it keeps on doing, the pound. Euro dollar sideways, but holding above support. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at these markets now in a bit more detail. Let's have a quick look at GameStop and see where that's trading now. I'm becoming addicted to GameStop without actually trading it. Oh, it's looked like, there you go, they've bought the dip again. So the market's been open for, how long has it been open for? 15 minutes? 13 minutes. And it's traded from 400 to 280, and now it's at 320, 321. Crazy market. Let's take a look at some of the indices. Let's bring up the S&P, and then maybe we'll have a look at the Nasdaq. So just to remind ourselves where what's going on with the S&P. We're not far off all-time highs. We've seen all-time highs again for the S&P 500, the broader US stock market this month. Not back, big move. You can see there. You can see the size of the candle, can't you? The sell-off on Wednesday, and again, a driver behind this was apparently funds liquidating bluer chip stocks to cover their losses in the not so blue chips, shorting the not so blue chips. We've had this trend. Clearly, we go back to March for the trend in the S&P down here, but we've had this more gradual trend since November. So we are 2.5 months into this. I still, if I was trading it today, I'd still fancy it for a buy today. So, we've got lots of support, S&P support from 3,600 through to 3,700. We had the lows yesterday, a couple of days ago at 3,712. So for me, I'm still tempted to be a buyer. Let's take a look at the short-term charts. So if we come in, I think what's interesting is really the last few days. If we look on, when was this? This was Wednesday. So Wednesday it closed pretty much near the lows. It did push below those lows overnight. We had a big run up yesterday, but then turns around 6 o'clock UK time overnight. Today, overnight this morning, ahead of the open, has come back near those lows from Wednesday and has held. So I think it's really interesting down here, and I would be tempted to be a buyer if we see a bit of strength. You know, we've got these areas clearly where sentiment changed the last couple of days for the S&P. You know, so 37.12 through the 37.30. The market's currently 37.50. I do wonder if we'll have a bit of a bounce going on from the S&P from here. There's the overnight low. Should we do a trade? We normally do a trade on these things, don't we? So let's do a trade on the S&P down here. So the overnight low was 37.35, or the 1 o'clock low, I should say. We are seeing a little bit of stability down there. Let's put a trade on, and let's go below the lows of this morning. So just 8 o'clock this morning. It's going to be a bit of a wide stop down there. It's a 20-point stop, isn't it, on the S&P? Let's do it and see. Let's go 37.25, and we'll see how that one works out. I could do with being perhaps a bit more patient, to be honest, but let's do it. We normally let's get 100 quid on these trades. Look, it's moving already. There we go. We did it anyway. So we bought it. We bought the S&P. Let's see if it can push it. If it pushes this way back to where it was just an hour ago, it's a good old move, and it could move the stop loss up to break even and see what happens next. So there's stocks. Really volatile week for stocks. If we have a look at the Nasdaq, so there's our Nasdaq. There's the Nasdaq trend. This is the Nasdaq 100 from March of last year. Clearly, when markets really sold off, and then clawed its way higher. We saw fresh all-time highs for the Nasdaq just this week. So the 26th of Jan. So that was what was that? Tuesday. Fresh all-time highs for the Nasdaq. Knocked with everything else on Wednesday. Quieter day yesterday. And again, perhaps we'll see something of a recovery today. Let's see. Let's see what goes on. But again, I think for the Nasdaq, these old levels back here from early in the week could be important. So I'm still bullish on stock markets. You know, if the Nasdaq made all-time highs 3 or 4 days ago, it shows you which way the trend is. A bit of fun and games this week, but doesn't really change the bigger picture. Right. So that's that done. Let's take a look at gold. Then we'll take a look at silver, and then we'll have a look at FX, and then we'll have a look at cryptos and oil. So here's the chart in gold. So gold is taking a bit of a hit today, $20 in the last 20 minutes or so. So let's just flip this over to a daily chart. It has been, let's get rid of the indicators. It has been, I think, a bit boring, you know, since last week. You know, where were we last week? We were here somewhere. We're pretty much trading where we were last week. I still wonder with gold. We had all-time highs in the summer at $2,075 an ounce, near enough. The market sold off into December. It started the year strong. It looked like it was breaking through this correction. Has sold off, but has held above the old lows. So for me, the trade, I think I do have a trade running on gold at the moment, but the trade I'd be doing on gold at the moment for my money, and clearly no one knows, is betting, is this the start of a recovery in gold since the end of November low? So we are nearly 2 months into this. So that for me is for my trading is my preferred trade on gold, looking to buy any weakness, and initially targeting a run back up to the 2021 highs at 1960, so $100 above where we are now. And I'd only change my mind in the short term if it broke below the mid-January lows at 1800. So for me, it's volatile. It's a bit boring over the last week, 2 weeks, but perhaps it is trying to stage some sort of a recovery there. Let's see what happens. But let's get into silver. So again, I think there are people commenting on the Reddit thing for silver who are probably better informed than I am about this. But let's take a look at it. So someone's saying Wall Street bets are positioning with silver futures in March. I do think we are seeing the power of the crowd when it comes to trading silver. So I do have on this for those of you who've never watched our videos before, This is an account I use with real money that we do in the videos. So we started off with £10,000 back in August 2019. So we do trades on this account based on the sort of stuff we talk about in the videos. There are a couple of trades running on silver. The latest trade was done the 19th of Jan. So that would have been, I think, when we did the silver video last week. So bought in at $25. The market's currently 27 on silver. I'd wonder. I think it's one thing to move a stock. Is it possible for a bunch of retail traders to move a metal? Well, clearly they have so far. But how much further can they move it? Who knows? We might find out in the next week. But again, with silver, I still think, for me, the right way to be on silver is to be bullish. Clearly, $28 is a real problem for silver. The highs from January, sort of the highs back here. I still think medium term, targeting a run up to about 30 on silver, the highs for August, would be my preferred trade. If I wasn't in already, I don't think I'd be a buyer now. I think if we picked up on the trading for silver, if we go back and just look at this year, we've seen a good move over the last 24 hours or so, but it doesn't really change the picture for the last month, which has been pretty sideways. So if I didn't have a trade on, I'd rather be a buyer if it got knocked back down towards $25 an ounce again. So I do still think the recovery for silver is still valid. I just wonder if we're really going to see it through $28 in the short term, or does it need a bit more backwards and forwards to build up to that? So it's been an exciting couple of days in silver. Let's see where it ends today. I think if we can break 28, again, then we are really targeting 29.30. The highs from the summer of last year. So metals still mildly positive, but perhaps there's going to be a bit more to and fro next week. And let's talk about the dollar index while we're talking about silver. I often touch on this. I think this is a really interesting market to watch because it affects so many different things. This is the dollar, the US dollar, against a basket of different currencies. It's been in decline since March of last year, when the index was trading at 104, traded down to 89 recently, so it dropped 15% into January. And I do wonder, is this going to be the comeback story for 2021, US dollar strength? You can see it hasn't really done much over the last week. I think if it starts trading through 91, it does look like a bit of a change of trend. So I do have, because I've got lots of trades on my own account on gold and silver and the euro and the pound. So I do have an alert set up if it starts breaking through 91, because I do think that could signify perhaps a change in sentiment towards the US dollar. But we're not getting it yet. So let's see. But we talked about those currencies. We talked about pound against the dollar. We'll look at those. We'll look at oil. We'll look at Bitcoin. Then I'll go back to the comments and see if there are any questions. This is pound against the dollar. So I've been long, done various trades over the last few months. Where are they? Down here somewhere. Here we go. So at the moment I'm running 1,100 quid profit on pound against the dollar. I think the last trade we did was actually in the last week, wasn't it? So 10 to 3 last week. So it would have been this time last week. Buying at 136.50. We're up £100 or so on that so far. But it's really strange because it keeps trying to punch higher. And again, you can see it this week. It's pushed up to 137.58 a couple of days ago, but we don't really get any follow through. But saying all that, the trend off the May lows here, that I've drawn in here, is still very much up. So I'd still be a buyer, but perhaps we need a bit of a shakeout for the pound just to bring in some fresh buyers and get some fresh momentum. I think it is bullish. It's just not making much progress up here. It's a bit frustrating, to be honest, because it looks like it's going to go, and then it just falls back again. So it's a bit of an annoying market, pound against the dollar at the moment. If we look at euro dollar, this is a bit more interesting. I think we've seen a bit more of a volatile month for the euro against the dollar. It did push up to 123.50, which was its best levels since back here, April 2018. It's got knocked back for me, I think this is a really interesting market to watch going into next week. We do have EU GDP data out next week, EU retail sales out next week. We've got really big support for the euro from December, around about ahead of 120. If let's pick 120 as the round number, we can see on the way up we got the odd sell-off towards 120. The buyers came back in. We've had the same thing again over the last week or so. So I think the euro will be an interesting one to watch into February to see if you can get a move on and push back up towards 123.50, that sort of area, back to the highs from earlier this month. So I think that's a really interesting market to watch, euro dollar. I'm still bullish, even if we get a deeper sell-off. If we break 120, I think the risk is we will get a much deeper sell-off. But I'd still be looking for buying opportunities because that trend since those March lows is still very much going. Let's take a look at oil. Then we will take a look at, what did I say, Bitcoin. Where's the S&P? We're making 30 quid on that S&P trade. There's an older trade in there from the 17th of December, and that's the one we did this afternoon, just now. So we'll see how that one works out. There are a few oil trades running as well. I think the last one was from the video. Oh, it was this week's video, the 25th of Jan, buying in at 52.45. If we take a look at oil, I think it's almost, the price action is a little bit like the pound this month, that it sort of looks strong, but it doesn't go anywhere, but it's not selling off either. And I think it's quite surprising, perhaps surprising to me, that oil has been so strong given how many unknowns there are for the economy this year. We know all about clearly the second wave, if that's what it is, of the virus that we've seen, particularly in continental Europe and the UK in recent weeks. It does, the numbers in the UK anyway do seem to be dropping back slightly. We've got the vaccines coming out, etc., etc. But it still looks like a really shaky economic picture for this year. But oil is not selling off. So I think it's interesting that oil is continuing to hold up here. For me, I'd still be a buyer on oil, even though my sort of gut reaction is not to be a buyer, because it's still holding. Whenever it gets knocked back to sort of $51.50, the buyers come back out. So I think it's an interesting market to watch. That trend is still up. I think if it starts to lose 50, 51, then we could see a much bigger sell-off in oil. But for now, at least, you can't really argue with that trend that we've got in the price of oil. So what would be the next target? Let's roll it back a bit. Probably, I think there's an obvious level. I think from February up here, I think about $54. The February 2020 highs, $54.50, something like that. So still positive oil, but hasn't really done much for the last 3 weeks. And then we'll take a look at Bitcoin, then we'll get into the any questions. So this was the tweet from Elon Musk this morning, where he just basically changed his profile description to, I think it was #Bitcoin. The price has gone from 32,000 up to as high as 38,500. And I just wonder with Bitcoin, I think I did put a tweet out earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, I can't remember, on the sell-off to 30,000, that 30,000 could be a good level. And it did trade as low as 28.7, and it's sort of held. And I think I think this is the important low for Bitcoin, the 4th of Jan low at 27,800. When we spike down there, maybe we can see it better if we look on an hourly chart. Let's just stretch this out. So the 4th of January, here it is. It's this one here, isn't it? So the 4th of January. And you can see whenever Bitcoin takes a little trip below 30,000, it doesn't last very long. So if you really want to buy Bitcoin and trade it, then sell-offs to 30 look like a good opportunity. But I do wonder, given how much it gained during December, it basically more than doubled, didn't it? Are the best of the moves behind us now in Bitcoin for a while, and what we'll have now are people who saw it run as high as 42,000 nearly, see it drop to 30, so whenever it gets back up to mid-30s, so they think, oh quick, I'm going to sell and take some of my profits. So I think we'll have much more chop, much more to and fro when it comes to Bitcoin. So for me at the moment, it's been a great move today. I suppose an aggressive trade would be to go short now. Go short now with a stop above 39,000 on Bitcoin to see if it retraces some of this move. that we've seen since 8 o'clock this morning UK time. So let's see what happens. But it's always interesting. I mean, there's so much going on at the moment this week. It is crazy. And I think somebody in the comments said it is a nonsensical market, and it really is at the moment. Let's have a quick look at GameStop, then we'll get back to the questions. So GameStop, again, it looks to be sort of stabilising around $300 for at least the next 30 seconds. So let's deal with the questions. So I think as a quick summary, what to watch next week? Loads to watch. I think stock markets, broader stock markets, leaving aside all the Reddit stuff, the Wall Street Bet stuff, broader stock markets looking to see if they can recover back after a really wobbly week. The Euro's really interesting because it's trading near support at the moment, I think. So that's a really interesting market to watch going into next week. And gold and silver look positive, but perhaps they'll come under a bit of pressure next week. Let's take a look at the questions. Let me go through the questions and have a look at some markets. So we did euro dollar. Oh, VIX. Somebody mentioned the VIX actually. So the VIX, if you're not familiar with the VIX, so you can see it here, CBOE, Chicago Board Options Exchange, isn't it? Volatility index. So it's an indicator. It's not an indicator. It's an index based on. It's derived from the implied volatility of, I think it's put options on the S&P 500. It's often referred to as the fear index. Okay, so when the VIX is high, like on Wednesday this week, it means that investors, institutions are paying quite high premiums for downside protection in the stock market. So if you see a sharp move in markets down, the VIX usually jumps, but you could use it as a contrary indicator, saying that fear is getting too extreme. Perhaps now is the time to go the other way. So here's the VIX over how many? So if we go back, how many years have I got of the VIX here? So I go back to, I've got quite a lot of data. I'm surprised. If I go back to, we've got here going back to 2014. You can see where's the big jump in the VIX. There's various spikes along the way. You can see, but clearly March last year, when markets absolutely fell off a cliff because of the virus, the VIX got near to 100. Typically even spikes up to sort of 40 to 50 are pretty extreme, but the VIX jumping to 100, not surprisingly. But again, in recent days, after being flat, when markets are just going up and boring volatility, the VIX is really low. But you can see the jump in the VIX earlier this week. So I think. To me, it's signifying that on Wednesday the panic was maybe overdone, which for me, that VIX would give me confidence that perhaps we'll see markets, broader stock market indices, claw back some of the losses in the last few days. But I think the VIX, if you're interested in stocks or you're trading the S&P, I think the VIX is always an interesting one to keep an eye on. Right, let me carry on going back to the comments and see what else. AMC, we had a quick look at AMC, didn't we? What about BlackBerry? Of course, BlackBerry was another Wall Street Bets one this week, wasn't it? So they're up 6%. And I have to say, if someone's in these stocks and they made money, fantastic. But I think if we're trying to apply our normal, sensible, calm approach to trading these markets, you can't do it. You really can't do it. You're in it and you take a bit of a punt, and it's a massive gamble, even more than perhaps a normal trade would be. But when you have stocks like BlackBerry, that traded up on Wednesday, traded up to, where do they get to? $28.50, and they're $15 today. And then beginning of January, they were $6. It's massive. It's like a penny stock is how it's trading, isn't it? And clearly they are lower cap stocks or they start off being lower cap stocks than a lot of stocks, but they go absolutely nuts. But I do wonder, particularly with the likes of GME, is it over now? Is actually the clever side of the trade to be short? I don't know. So if you were going to go short today, let's say you went short now at 308, my stop would be the other side of just the high for the day, the high set in the last half an hour, which is 30% higher than where it is now. That sort of volatility is just crazy. So I'm quite happy to be a spectator and not a participant of these stocks. But it's fascinating to watch. What else? GM, Elon Musk. Someone saying the market looks like a big joke at the end of the week. No, it's too random. I think that's fair enough. Someone mentioned Tesla as well. Tesla, they came out with earnings this week, didn't they, Tesla? And I think there was some, I must admit, I didn't really follow it. There was something slightly disappointing in them. I thought it was interesting though. The price action on Tesla is interesting because it poked up 25th of Jan to almost $900, so $8.99. Let's maybe flip it over to a 5-minute chart. So where are we? Here's the, again, quite a lot of volatility in Tesla. Not a patch on some of these like the likes of GME. But I think it's interesting. It got knocked back down and it's been bought back up again. So I suppose if you wanted to trade Tesla now at 820, for me, an obvious level for the stop would be the other side of 790. We've seen this massive volatility this week, relatively speaking, 10% swings in Tesla. It had a go at trying to break lower and it hasn't. So I suppose, and again, an aggressive trade would be a buyer with a stop the other side of 790. So let's see. Someone saying whatever is happening in the market is the craziest and most beautiful thing I've ever seen. There you go. I think it is. It's definitely crazy. It is absolutely crazy what's going on. Silver, okay. Elon Musk, huge sell-off on gold. What do you think about Corporation and Palantir? Let's see. I don't know if we cover those stocks. Who's Corporation? Is there anything just called Corporation? I don't think so. Hang on. Palantir. Let's see if we cover those. Oh, there you go. Palantir Technologies. What do? Private American software company that specializes in big data analytics. Okay, founded by Peter Thiel. Okay, let's have a quick look. Again, I think I do. With some of these markets like this one that we don't have that much data on. I don't know if they're newly listed or perhaps we only started covering them in October, so we've only got 4 months worth of data. Based on the trend of the last 4 months, I'd want to be a buyer. The problem is, and I think it's a fair enough thing because of what we've seen this week. Volatility is a problem if you're trying to trade sensibly. If you're trying, I wouldn't trade anything that swings around 30% in a day. But for other people, it might be different. If you were trading this one, Palantir, whatever they are, what would you do? They touched $44, $45 nearly yesterday. They're $36 today, so they've dropped 20% since yesterday. If you're a buyer now, if I was a buyer now at 36.30, I would put my stop loss. The closest I would want it is underneath yesterday's low. So yesterday's low is 32. So we've got about let's call it $5 risk, and maybe $10 upside if it goes back to where it was yesterday. So that's a reasonable bet. Risking 5 to make 10 is an okay bet for me. Just the volatility is nuts on some of these stocks, isn't it? So Nikolai Corporation, because didn't they get hit this week? Is that it's the electric cars, isn't it? Nikola Corporation. Let's have a quick look at those. I think they are interesting. Is that the one that I remember we did a video on electric cars in the summer, and I did a short on this one, and I think that didn't they come out with there was some financial impropriety, shall we say, where something had been done with their numbers. So here's the chart. So they came to the market in June of this year at $64 a share, trade up to 76, and they've traded as low as about 13. So what would you do? Again, massive volatility. It hits a low on Christmas Eve of $13. It trades up to 30 yesterday. So again, we've seen more than 100% move in a little over a month. I suppose what I would do, I would be tempted to be a buyer. I think it's a highly speculative trade, but if we picked up on that low from December, I'm a big fan of just trading with the price action. Yeah, I'd be waiting to see when are the buyers going to come back in. There'll be people who will have watched this run up to 30 just over the last couple of days. It's now dropped back 20%. Other people who are going to think, actually, I've missed the boat. I need to jump in. So I think it's quite interesting now that yesterday it traded down to 22.60. it's gapped up a bit at the open and it's come back again. So I think it's quite an interesting one to watch now and take the view, okay, do I want to be a buyer now, where it is now, with a stop, somewhere underneath the low for yesterday, somewhere the other side of 22.50, or do I wait to see if it's going to collapse down to 20 and be a buyer then? I think it's interesting. I think for me it would be, probably more of a day trade, in and out today if possible, or maybe in and out but out next week. But it is showing some stability over the lows for yesterday. So I think it is interesting down here. I don't know if we're going to see it at $30 anytime soon or $10 anytime soon, but it's an interesting stock, and I'm a big fan of trading with price action. So it is an interesting one down here. Can you trade ARC on the Capital platform? I am not sure. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, you can. So that we do have their, whatever that is, their Incian ETF, long-term growth of capital. I mean, they've had incredible performance, haven't they? ARC. So if we go back, that was the ETF, how much did it go up last year? Where did we come into it? $50. So it more than doubled last year. So you can trade that with us as well. Silver is volatile. Figures. Can we have a look at dollar Swiss and euro sterling? Yes, let's have a look at that. We did do a trade on euro sterling last week or the week before, didn't we? Is it losing money? I think it is losing money. Here we go. So that's losing money. So I think I was trying to buy a bounce, and I think I had a bounce for a little bit, and then the bounce went away. But let's take a look at euro sterling, because I was thinking it was going to hold. But we have seen, because we've seen that stronger pound and weaker euro, I was watching that level, which had been a floor for the euro against the pound since June of last year. And it started drifting below it. But an aggressive trade now, if I had to do a trade on euro sterling, I would buy it again. No, it's at 88.50. I'd be tempted, because it's fallen out, but it hasn't really had a massive sell-off on the break. And as we know, the pound can't seem to get much momentum. The euro looks like it could be on the turn for next week. That would be good for euro sterling. So the fact it's broken below, I think if there's an aggressive trade here with a stop the other side of Wednesday's low, and Wednesday's low was about 8,800. So it's an interesting trade here. For maybe 60, 70 points risk, it could be quite a bit of upside. I think if it breaks below 88, then we have a much more cleaner breakdown through support, and perhaps we can start looking at a run back to the lows, which are only down at 87 from April. I must admit, I never trade that one, but I think it's quite interesting the fact we haven't seen a massive sell-off on that break, so perhaps we'll see it squeeze a bit higher going into next week. Dollar Swiss. Here we go. I'm guessing that's going to be pretty much similar to, it looks a bit like the dollar index chart, doesn't it? When we looked at that dollar index chart, where we've seen, if we pick up on maybe the trend since the March highs, just to give us a bit of perspective. Let me know that. So we're a long way away from that trend, but sorry, keep clicking the wrong thing. But again, I think on dollar Swiss, again, I think if it can break 89.50, it starts to look a lot more interesting for a recovery in the dollar. You could argue, I'm not a fan of patterns, but I suppose you could argue that's an upside down, an inverse head and shoulders down there. So I think it's an interesting one to watch. And I do wonder, is the dollar the great comeback story for this year? But at the moment, it needs to get a bit of a move on dollar Swiss to actually start doing that. How is our S&P trade doing? So we're up 50 quid on that S&P trade. Let's have a quick look at what that market has actually done, because I was surprised how much it got hit at the open today, but it has. We bought in about here, didn't we? So I do wonder if it will go back to the out of hours highs, and maybe then it starts a move back up to the highs from just yesterday. Let's see what happens. Did hedge funds sell gold to pay for their shorts? I don't know. No idea. I think the chat was that they were selling stocks. There's silver. Silver's just calmed down a little bit. Could we have a look at American Airlines? Yes, let's have a look at those. Let's have a look at American Airlines. Was that another stock? There are so many stocks that get rumoured now to be part of the Wall Street bets takeover. But American's interesting, I think. What would you do here? Again, massive volatility the last few days. On Tuesday, it was trading at $15.50, and it touched. Where did it get to? 20, 21, 22. So it's up nearly 50%. For me, I would wait for it to settle down. I think it's quite interesting that it couldn't get anywhere near the old highs from June. So for me, it perhaps looks a little bit boring, but a bit like the Nikola chart that we looked at. If it trades back more into the range from the last couple of days, perhaps it looks a bit more interesting before it really took off. But I think it's clearly been somewhat distorted by the moves of the last couple of days. Can we have a look at Ethereum? I don't have Ethereum anymore. I think I mentioned this the other week, didn't I? That because, let me see if I can bring it up on something else. Because of the change, which if you're a UK person, you'll know, the change in regulation that people in the UK are not allowed to trade derivative. If you're trading through an FCA regulated broker, you can't trade cryptos anymore. But here's I've picked it up from somewhere else, from TradingView. So I think the chart still looks pretty strong. I think this is showing the market cap of Ethereum. We do have Ethereum on our platform, I should say. So if you're not doing it from the UK, you are covered. It's just I haven't flipped my platform over to try and get it covered, and I'm really struggling to bring it up on here. I think because I haven't got CME access. But I think Ethereum looks stronger than Bitcoin. I'll sort that out for next week. I'll get Ethereum switched on my platform without being allowed to trade it, so we can have a look at it properly for next week. Someone's saying they're a GameStop short. Okay, good luck to that. For that, let's have a quick look. Let's bring that one up while I'm scanning through the rest of the comments. It looks like it's sort of stabilized now, doesn't it? Around 300s. Silver, we looked at silver, looked at Nikolai. Neo, the EV stock. Let's have a look. Yeah, is that a Chinese company? Neo. Am I getting confused with somebody else? Yeah, it is. Okay. Let's have a look. So another electric car company. Let's bring them up and have a look at them. It's good. It looks good, doesn't it? I mean, clearly, I think they're all. I mean, I don't know anything about Neo, but clearly, it's a nice sector to be in at the moment from an investment point of view, or it has been over the last year because of the Tesla effect. Neo came to the market, looks like February 2020, around $5 a share, and now they're $60 a share, $59 a share. Very nice indeed. What would you do with Neo? I mean, the long-term trend is back at 32. But as we know, from the likes of Tesla, if you'd have sat there waiting for it to pull back, you'd have missed out on a lot of the profits. So for me, I don't know. If I had to trade it, I'd be looking to be a buyer because that trend is up. For me, the question is, where would your stop go? I think probably what's gone on more recently is more relevant if we were looking to buy it now. We did have that move out middle of January to all-time highs. Didn't last long. Sold off. So for me, if I was a buyer now at 59, I think if I wanted to give it quite a bit of room, my stop would be going the other side of the December lows, which is a long way away. But that's where it would be. A more aggressive stop, I suppose. That's only yesterday's low down there at 55, isn't it? Perhaps the other side of the 6th of Jan lows at about $49. So I'd be a buyer. Clearly nothing today is financial advice. No one's got a crystal ball. I'd be a buyer because the trend is up, but I'd be happier buying if the price would just halve. It would be a much better trade. But as we know, with some of these stocks, once they get going, they really don't look back at those longer term trend lines. Okay, what have you got? GME, Tesla. Yeah, we looked at Tesla. FTSE 100. The FTSE is interesting. We never really look at the FTSE 100, and I must admit, I do not look at it hardly at all myself, because I'd much rather trade the S&P. I think the FTSE 100 is the UK's index. Obviously, it's a bit of an odd one because there are so many companies in there that derive their earnings from overseas. So what's happening with the pound can really affect the FTSE 100. And if we get a strong pound, it can weigh on the FTSE. And look at, you've got US stock markets at all-time highs. Look at where the FTSE is, 6,500. Its all-time high is back here, 7,900 in 2018. Yeah, it's nearly 3 years ago. So if you've been invested in the FTSE rather than US stocks, you have underperformed. But I think it's interesting, the FTSE, because of what's happened over, this year, I suppose, that we have seen it. The highs after the big sell-off in March, the highs were in at 6,500. The market did push up near 7,000 earlier this month. It's got knocked back. But I was looking actually just this morning thinking, I wonder if there's going to be a buying opportunity next week in the FTSE. And it's really because the market has been strong overall. If we see US stock markets recover again next week, you'd expect the rest of the world to get dragged along with it. So I do wonder if there is a trading opportunity setting up on the FTSE, looking to be a buyer with the stop loss. The widest I'd want my stop would be the other side of these late November lows, the other side of 62.50. But I do wonder if in this whole area we're going to see the FTSE 100 perhaps snap back and come back up. So I think it's interesting, the FTSE. Let's have a look at it next Friday, maybe when we look at it then. But I do wonder if we're going to see it finally turn around and get a bit of a move on again. Can Tesla go down with all the competition coming from electric cars? Of course they can. They can go down and up. Tesla. I think at the moment, I think the question is the valuation in Tesla. I'm sure I've seen numbers that Tesla, if you look at all the cars they've sold, each car they sell is about 1.2 million of their market cap compared to Toyota, where it's something like $10,000. So clearly Tesla, I think as I said a lot of times on this, is a bet on the future, is a bet on Tesla continuing to stay dominant, the same way we've seen the domination of Apple, in their space, in the smartphone market. Clearly they broke a lot of ground with the iPhone. They were trading on what may have been seen as a massive valuation back then. The bet was, would they continue to dominate? So far they have. So Apple shares have continued. I think that's the dilemma. If you're a Tesla investor at the moment, you're right. There's a lot more companies coming in to electric cars. I think Tesla's still the dominant one. Can it continue that? So let's see. It'd be interesting. Alibaba. Let's have a look at that. We looked at those last week as well, didn't we? So the US. Is it like the US, not the US, the Chinese Amazon, eBay? What's the right way of describing it? I don't know. So great trend. Fell off a cliff in November. I think their founder, wasn't it, Jack Ma, went missing, and there was some concern about what had actually happened. But I think he's made a reappearance again. For me, I would almost be tempted to be a short seller up here of Alibaba. We had, the market sold off through the trend. It's broken lower. It's tried to build a recovery. It's stalled over the last week. So for me, perhaps the interesting trade is to be short. So to sell it at 257. Should we do that? We never really do shorts on this. So let's maybe do a short trade on Alibaba. So they've traded as high as 271 this week. Let's say we go 275 for a stop. So we'll go short. So we'll put a stop at 275. It's our normal 100 quid risk, so we need to wind that right down. So if I sell 10 shares, and that's still too many. If I sell 7 shares, 8 shares, 7 shares. So you see what I'm doing here. If I sell 7 shares where they're trading now with a stop at 275, if I get stopped at 275, I'll lose £91 in this example. So that's why I was fiddling around with the numbers there to get the risk right. So let's go short. There we go. We went short Alibaba. So I'm just wondering if the bounce back is right. Clearly it has run out of steam. So perhaps we're going to just drift off back down to these lows from just a couple of weeks ago, around 220. But if it breaks through these old highs, I'd rather be out of the short. So let's see. Let's see how that one works out. But I think it looks maybe a little bit weak, perhaps, at the moment, that one. Can we have a look at Square? I must admit, I don't think I've ever looked at Square. Let's have a look at it. It looks pretty strong, doesn't it? Really strong, really, to be honest. Is that the right Square? Yeah, I presume it is. Great trend since March, like as with clearly plenty of shares. Is that the payments thing, isn't it, Square? Actually, that's almost a couple of days ago, textbook buying opportunity. So for those of you who are fans of trend lines, it pushed out to, it looks like all-time highs. Yeah, all-time highs in early January. Sells off to 200 and has bounced back again. So for me, I would be a buyer. Where the closest I'd have my stop would be the other side of that January the 27th low, the other side of 197, but probably maybe a bit further away, down at 190, something like that. But it's interesting. It's an interesting one. Great trend in that one. Rolls-Royce. Yeah, let's have a look at Rolls-Royce. So the UK listed company. Rolls-Royce is not Rolls-Royce cars. It's Rolls-Royce engines. So it's nothing to do with the car business. The car business is owned by BMW, of course. Rolls-Royce engines that go onto planes. It just looks like, look at that trend. What is the trend in Rolls-Royce? It is not up, is it? So it's gone from 2018, £10 a share to, what is it now, 93p a share. And again, I know why, stocks that have fallen off a cliff do really appeal to people. The same way it would have looked appealing perhaps at £6 in 2020. Oh, it's lost 85% just since February last year. So again, I think it's I wouldn't buy it. It's an out and out gamble to be a buyer. If I was a buyer, the closest I'd want my stop, I would have to go the other side of the October lows, which is a long way away, and sort of buy it and forget about it and hope it's going to recover. But I'm not really a fan of ones that have fallen that much. So you miss out on opportunities. But I just think for weak stocks like that, I'd rather find something that was trending up. Oh, GameStop's gone boring. What's happened? GameStop's doing nothing. Can we talk about Facebook? Yes. I think we did a trade on Facebook, didn't we, the other week? Hang on a second. 15th of Jan, 2 weeks ago. So we did a trade buying them at 252, and they're 259 at the moment. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at Facebook. Facebook, so they're down 2% today. Let's have a look on the dailies. It's a bit... Oh, we bought... I remember now. We bought here, didn't we? Should have got out of them. So we ended up buying here on the live stream 2 weeks ago. Jumped up. And they got really hammered. So for me, I'd still be looking to be a buyer. Maybe not today. But we have these big level. 245 is a big level in Facebook. So I'd still be tempted to be a buyer looking for another run up at 290. But there's a great example there of you should really pay attention to your trades, and some of the ones I do, we don't really pay attention to them on this platform because we use it for the videos. So I should really have cranked the stop loss right up for that one, but it's come off. It'd be interesting to see if we see it hold again out of this 245 like it did a couple of weeks ago. So it's an interesting one to watch. Still pretty weak at the moment, I think. Right, what else have we got? How are we doing for time? So we'll start wrapping things up in 10 or 15 minutes. Don't forget, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, we do lots of slightly more normal paced videos during the week on various markets. So if you could subscribe, that does help. Let me just do a very quick advert for spread betting. We launched spread betting last year. So if you're in the UK or Ireland, you can trade spread betting with us. So go to Capital.com. And you can open up a spread betting account in a few minutes. It's basically the same as trading contracts for difference, the sort of stuff I do on this platform, but it's tax-free spread betting, which if you know anything about trading, I'm sure you know. So the details are there. So if you go to Capital.com and go to the website to find out more about the company and download our app, open an account, all the usual stuff. So because I do these videos with Capital.com, hopefully there's a bit of business that we can do off the back of it, and that means we can carry on doing the videos. Right, let's have a look. Next market. We looked at the FTSE. Oh, natural gas. I did actually put a natural gas video out this week, and I did buy it this week eventually for myself as well. I think it's an interesting one. Natural gas. It never has that much interest in it, to be honest, when we do a video on it. But I think there's a few of us who are hardcore natural gas fans. So it's an interesting market. Interesting market last year. It went from $1.50 to $3.40 in October. And it's been correcting since then. And I think I was complaining about it in early January that I thought I'd missed the trade on natural gas. But I was going to wait for a sell-off. So I got it, and I did buy it earlier this week. I do think that perhaps we have seen a base form here in the price of natural gas. You know, it's been correcting off those highs. You know, I think for me this year, I think we've seen that correction broken. It's sold off. It's held above the old low. If we can crack the mid-January high, I'll be looking for a run back to 3 and maybe even higher. And my stop loss is the other side of this low from December the 28th. So I think, let's see what happens in February. But I think perhaps we'll see the price of natural gas move higher from here. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's have a quick look at, we'll do so. I'll just try and whiz through everything very quick now because we've still got a few left. So Qualcomm was one. US tech stock, obviously. Let's have a look at that. Looks good. Trend looks good, doesn't it? On Qualcomm, off the March lows. Great trend. And again, if you've seen any of our videos, you know I'm a big fan of buying with the trend. Moved out to what looks like fresh all-time highs, or at least multi-year highs, just last week. So for me, I would still be a buyer, on dips for Qualcomm. Coca-Cola. Let's have a look at that. It's a strange. I know I've looked at this one in the past. Actually, it's a weird one. Actually, it's quite interesting that it still hasn't quite. Well, it hasn't got back to where it was before markets fell off a cliff. So it went from $60 down to $36. It has been staging, you know, a recovery since then that looks something like that. I could, you know, everything I've said about trends, looking at that, I'd have to be a buyer, wouldn't I, of Coca-Cola? With stop losses, the closest I'd want my stop, the other side of these late October lows at 47, perhaps even down at 46. But I think it's definitely interesting here. We've come back to that trend line that's been in place since April. So I think it's a really interesting market down here. But looking to see if it can recover. Costco. A lot of these US stocks do look the same. You know, not surprising because we're seeing strong US markets since March. This Costco is interesting. I mean, it got knocked a bit clearly in March with everything else, but it didn't really change that longer term uptrend. Let's bring it up. Great uptrend. So for me, maybe a little bit weak still at the moment. It'd be interesting to see if it can hold above the lows for the year so far, ahead of 350. But lots of support coming in from 330. So I would definitely be looking for the buying opportunity down there. Right, that's it. I think we'll have a quick whiz around some of the other markets, and then I will wrap things up. I think because we've been going on for about an hour today, and I've lost track of where I am in the comments. Let me just see if I've not missed out on anything quickly. Okay, so what I'll do. So like I say, markets to watch next week. I think the foreign exchange markets definitely. Euro, are we going to see a euro comeback next week? I think it's going to be interesting because it continues to hold above 120.40. Silver's been interesting because of this alleged Wall Street bets activity. Fairly calm trading on silver since we started the thing today, the live stream today. Bitcoin, I do think the top may well be in for Bitcoin for a little bit now. A bit of excitement today on Elon Musk. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. And US stocks, what are they doing now? They're stalled a bit, the S&P, ahead of where it was at 10 to 2 today. But perhaps an interesting rest of the day in US stocks. So lots to watch. I'll be back next Friday to do all this again. If you have any questions, drop me an email. Clearly, we can't give financial advice, but any general trading questions, drop me an email, david.jones@capital.com. You can follow me on Twitter @JonesTheMarkets. Do subscribe to our Capital.com YouTube channel. We do regular videos. I think their Bitcoin is the next video actually I'm doing on Monday. So we do regular videos throughout the week. So if you subscribe to us, you're watching it now, click on subscribe and click the alarm bell notification. So follow Capital.com on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. But we'll wrap things up there. We'll come back to it. I'll do this all again next Friday. Payrolls next Friday at 1:30 UK time. We'll do this as usual 2:30. Let's just have a quick closing look at the GameStop price, currently trading at 300 by the looks of it. It's been a really a unique week in stock markets. We'll see what next week is like, but I'll be back on next Friday. Thanks for coming along. Good luck with your trading, and enjoy your weekend.